Right then guys, we're back with another roundup of the lunacy that's going on in the UK today. As you know, it's rampant and has been for over a year at this point. This time at least we don't have to deal with pound shop Rod Stewart or indeed Dr. Shillery Jones. Both of them are not involved in this one today, thank God. But with that being said, there is still a bunch of lunacy involved in this one, as you would expect, much like this one we're going to start with here. It comes from the Telegraph and is talking about doctors hitting back at NHS bosses over orders to see patients face to face. You know, actually doing their bloody job. Apparently some union has passed a vote of no confidence in senior officials, with GPs claiming they've been let down because they wanted to remain on some total triage bullshit where they just see you from home. This involves them sitting there while you phone them up or sit there on a video call so they can tell you what's wrong. Obviously it's completely useless, this goes without saying. But being doctors and the UK, they are apparently complaining because the NHS wants them to do their job, or should I say NHS England anyway. The devolved nations have their own ones and are probably doing something similar, but I can't be sure. This all obviously follows their total triage that lasted like about 24 hours before it was backtracked on by the NHS after public backlash for the complete stupidity of it. I mean, as I said when I first see this earlier, in my mind any doctor that signed up to this or says anything about it should literally be struck off there and then. You're not fit to be a GP in my mind. You're putting your own selfish laziness in front of that of the patients who might actually need you. As if a year of shirking your responsibilities is not enough, you want to continue to do it into the future. This is obviously just bollocks. Next up though, we have apparently the British Army saying they're going to punish any soldier who refuses the COVID vaccine, or they will be educated at least. This, I'm sure you would agree, is rather concerning and kind of a piss take to the soldiers around now and those who have gone before. You know, the ones that fought for the freedoms we were supposed to have. Apparently it's going to deem perfectly fit soldiers unfit to soldier because they refuse to have a vaccine for whatever reason they decide. How in the hell this is actually legal is beyond me, but let's be honest, what we have seen over the past year is complete lunacy, plain and simple, so I'm not really surprised by this. Now moving on back to something I actually covered the other day, we now have reports that over 100 planes have arrived in the UK from India since the coronavirus travel ban was put in place. Showing, as I said, the border is leaking like a fucking sieve. In fact, it's a bucket without a fucking bottom, let's be honest here. And you can bet your bollocks to a barn dance if there's 100 flights, then there's a couple of thousand people that have landed. I would bet they didn't have no vaccine passport, weren't required to do anything special or anything like that. I can guarantee they're all not in hotels, let me tell you that. Or should I say, the government's quarantine camps. Yes, they are hotels, but that is what they are. This story here though is just once again the government pissing in your pocket and telling you it's raining. Something like I said they've been doing for what, 15 months now. We are after all at 424 days of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Next up we have another quick one here that's coming out of Breitbart and it's talking about Lego launching some LGBTQIA nonsense in a rainbow set. This is obviously just a bunch of woke bollocks that no one actually cares about, pandering to a few people on Twitter. At the end of the day, to my mind, Lego has never been a boy or girl thing. It's just a toy for kids to play with. I've seen boys play with it, girls play with it, all loved it at the end of the day. This is just unnecessary woke nonsense which is coming from too many companies at this point. Luckily for Lego though, I think they're big enough that going woke ain't gonna send them broke. It will certainly turn a lot of their previous fans against them. No, it's unnecessary nonsense like I said. Next up we have an update on the road statue that I talked about yesterday. After making the video before it was actually sent live, the information actually changed. They decided not to remove the statue because obviously it's going to cost a fuck ton of money. This, I have to say, is something that the government seems to have got right. It's their bureaucracy that's allowed this to be stopped. At the end of the day, it being a listed building would have forced the fucking college to pay a shitload of money to actually get rid of it, meaning they have said that it's just not worth the hassle doing. Naturally, this will piss off a bunch of the salty tosspots that started all this up, but they're gonna have to suck it up, I guess. Next up, we have a comment here that says about Labour politicians opposing immigration have actually given up on winning. I think the Labour Party as a whole has given up on winning. They certainly would if they had half a fucking brain cell between them. But parts of this article are certainly right because, as you know, Labour do pander to the woke few on Twitter. In fact, many politicians actually do the same. It doesn't matter what side they're on. The only difference is, as I've said before, is that the Tories are actually better at hiding their unpatriotic bullshit and betrayal of the people of this country. Labour obviously do it loud and proud because they're a bunch of snivelling shitweasels and they actually love that name. I mean, let's be honest, they stick Diane Aberpotamus on TV giving us bullshit like this, so what can you really expect at the end of the day?
I think it's a strategy problem. When Keir Starmer was first elected as leader, he talked about unifying the party and he talked about not oversteering away from the policies under Jeremy Corbyn. He needs to go back to that way of thinking. I think sacking Angie Rayner, for instance, is not a unifying thing to do. I think we need to be building on the policies in the 2019 manifesto, many of which were forward-thinking and popular. We need to get the strategy right.
You're talking about going back to the policies or building on the policies from the 2019 manifesto. Some people listening to that might think that is quite a staggering thing to say. You know, that was your worst result since 1935. You lost 59 seats. Isn't that a manifesto that failed?
It was a manifesto that, taking the policies individually, was very popular. There's no doubt that the party leadership came under fantastic media attack, but the actual policies were popular.
The policies might have been popular individually, but as a whole, they weren't popular, were they? They led to your worst defeat since 1935.
They polled well. Of course we had a terrible defeat. You don't need to remind me that it was a terrible defeat. But
up next, we have another article about the Rochdale grooming gangs, this time about the scumbags who have actually committed these crimes, being given £2 million in taxpayer-funded legal aid. This actually really pisses me off, but it's not surprising in the slightest. As some will know, I covered a few months ago the terrorist family having legal aid paid for them, while the victim's family did not. So this really doesn't surprise me that they've been given £2 million to do all this bollocks and fight against convictions they know they are banged to rights on. Of course, them having strong English names naturally didn't have anything to do with it, you can be sure. Now actually following on from that, we have the killer who slit the throat of Emily Jones, you know, the 7-year-old on Mother's Day last year. She was given £70,000 of taxpayers' money to fight in an open and shut case. Once again, just taking the piss out of us or pissing in our pockets and telling us it's raining. This woman, you might remember, didn't get a single day in prison because she got stuck in a nut house instead. In my mind, that is not the fit punishment for it, but what can I actually say? It just goes to show what a clown country we actually live in that this is even occurring. But you know, with the government and politicians that we have, it's only going to continue to get worse. It's never going to get better, I can guarantee you that. Now, in the theme of people taking the piss out of us, we actually have The Guardian with an article here that's doing the same. Not surprising, but I'm going to call it out anyway. This one is in relation to UK asylum seekers that The Guardian says are at unprecedented risk of suicide amid deportation threats. All, of course, while suicide numbers are up to unprecedented levels in this country. The Guardian once again showing where their priorities lie. At the end of the day, their suicide risk or not shouldn't really matter to the people of this country, the media or anyone else. The government should be sending them packing within 1 hour of them landing on these shores. And if they catch them in the channel, they should literally just tow them straight back over to France and say, "Oi, you've lost something, take them fucking back." And finally, very quickly, we're actually going to talk about the BBC here, who seem to be losing 500 people a day when it comes to paying the licence. This is obviously good news because, like everyone else, I want the BBC defunded. It's a biased piece of shit that doesn't represent the people of this country. So hopefully in a couple of weeks we actually see articles saying that the BBC are losing 1,000, 2,000 and then 10,000 a day. That is the way we send it into the shitter, you can be sure. But on that note guys, that is going to be the end of the video there. Remember, the channel's social media links like BitChute and Odyssey are linked down below in the video description. Check them out if you have not already.